How are you guys doing out there?
What's up, what's up? Okay, so Charlie, you and I were talking right beforehand about the importance of everybody using creative strategies in order to pivot as listing agents, right? Or even putting deals together as a buyer. So why don't we talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you and I covered earlier, and I'll give you some of the strategies we're doing as a team, and then we'll talk about wealth building, because that's what we love to talk about.
One of the most important things that you got to start doing now is you're going to have to understand the title of the property, right? And what I mean by that is you have to understand what and who is in first trust position, understand if there's second trust position. So you're going to have to understand what type of loan is in first trust. Is it a VA loan, FHA loan, and in some of the outer suburbs, USDA loans? Is it a conventional loan? Is it Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, right? Is it an institutional lender on Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, but also too, is it a Bank of America loan? Is it a Wells Fargo loan? You have to understand who the underlying investor is, because on the government side, loan assumption is a big thing these days. On the conventional side, you can't really do a loan assumption, but you could do this thing called a sub 2. And so you really got to understand the financing, and why is that? Because if you can sort of assume one of these loans, you're going to further help the buyer. Maybe if there's an FHA marginal buyer at a 6.5, but if there's an FHA 3.5 loan on the house, if they can afford, they might be able to afford a 3.5% interest rate to get them into that house. So you guys are going to have to start being creative on how you sell that house, depending upon the underlying financing that's on that house.
Charlie, I want to interject. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to time travel? Like, who would like to time travel a little bit? Who would like to go back in time and like get 3.5%, 4% mortgage, right? That's possible. That is possible through an assumption or through buying sub 2. Last year, I think we bought 5 or 6 deals, all sub 2, which this isn't going to be a sub 2 class, because there's a little complexity to it, but I'm going to encourage everybody here, if you're an agent or if you're a lender, if you don't understand that, go research it, go learn it, right? Assumption, I think a lot of people understand the assumption game, right? But that's your ability to time travel, right? I remember, here's what's so cool about a sub 2, and I'll just kind of talk about this. If you can help a client or even yourself buy a sub 2, we bought a property where it was a 2% interest rate. It had been modified, and it had been already like in process for about a decade. So every time we make a payment, literally 50% of that payment goes towards equity. It's crazy. It was as if I traveled back 10 years and was able to get a 2% interest rate. Right.
Right. So for further clarification for you guys out there who don't know what it means, subject to means you're buying the property subject to the current loan. So the deed transfers to the buyer's name, but the debt instrument stays in the seller's name. There is a due on sale clause on a title change, okay? And so one of the things that you guys got to do is you got to understand that. And also, too, I was speaking to some agents on Sunday night, is that your brokers have got to understand that as well. And you might have to ask permission from your broker if you can do that type of transaction. And so it's very important. Some brokers might not allow you to do it. I don't know, does EXP allow that kind of thing from a real estate agent standpoint?
Yeah, as long as you're disclosing, and you just have to paper it. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yes. So what that also means is that you need a sub 2 title company that's friendly with sub 2s and knows how to do it. Because at the closing table, you do need to disclose. The buyer has to understand this due on sale clause, okay? They have to understand it. Now, let's get back to the percentages of a bank calling a subject to if they're the bank, right? And so that's why we talk about the government-sponsored loans. We talk about the conventional loans with the bigger banks. I have, in all my years, and our sub 2 experience is on the lending side, right? I've lent third trusts before, hard money on top of sub 2s. I've been in the second position on sub-twos as a hard money lender. We have purchased properties as sub-twos that we have fixed and flipped. I still have a couple properties in our rental portfolio that are subject twos. And so let's get to the odds on the bank calling it. Okay, the bigger institutions, Wells Fargo's, Capital One's, Bank of America's, your Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae's, Freddie Mac's, and your VA, VHDA's in Virginia, USDA's and VA loans. I've never seen one of those loans called on a due on sale clause.
They're happy the payment's being made.
That's right. And the reason why they're happy with payments being made is because they don't want to have to make you pay back the loan and then go originate another loan, right? They would rather receive that interest rate, even though it might be a lower interest rate, because it is a performing loan. Now, with that said, let's talk about the occasions where I've seen subject to loans called by the bank. And so what's going on out there right now is in the community bank space. So my definition of a community bank is a bank that has about $2 billion or less in assets, right? What's happening is they have a lot of loans in the Class B, Class C office space where they're in the FDIC sites from getting taken over. Well, what they got to do to get out of the FDIC sites is they have to raise capital. What are 3 ways that a bank raises capital? Number 1, deposits, right? They want to jack up the interest rates. They want to get deposits that way. Number 2, how do they raise deposits? Well, they got to go and sell off assets, right? And so what these guys are doing is if they need cash, for example, Sandy Spring. Sandy Spring is getting bought out by Atlantic Union. That merger just happened this past weekend. Sandy Spring has too much bad debt, right? So what they did is not only did they not raise enough money from their depositors, they had to call some of their loans on the sub-2 side. So they went through their Rolodex of loans that they had in their portfolio, and they said, oh, which of these loans has changed hands and the deed has changed? And the way they knew that is because the insurance changed, right? So if the insurance has changed, they said, okay, well, I'm going to call these loans because I've got to raise capital to get myself out of the FDIC sites. Now, that's the only time where I've seen this happen. And so if you have a smaller community bank that's a portfolio lender, just be aware of that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about lease options, because I believe that is probably going to be a tactic that's heavily used in today's market in order to get deals done. Everybody in here familiar with a lease option, right? Do you know what a lease option is? It's essentially rent with the option to buy, right? There might be a situation where a seller needs to just get out from under the payment, and there is a buyer that maybe doesn't qualify for the loan, but they're a high income earner. Can you name some scenarios where that might be the case? Divorce being one of the big ones, right? Divorce oftentimes kind of hurts people's credit, but maybe the person's a doctor or an attorney, so they're a high income earner, they've got cash, and so you could structure a deal where I come to the seller and say, I'll put down 10%, non-fundable deposit, right? And I'll make the mortgage payments, or I'll make the rent payments. Essentially, you're covering that seller's note, right? And they're happy because they got large upfront tranche of cash, plus their payment is being made with a future promise to purchase that property 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road, right?
Right. And then also, too, as an agent, you guys are probably sitting here thinking,
well, how do I get paid?
yeah, how do I get paid, right? How do I get paid? I'm not turning my listing into a rental if I don't have to.
Yeah.
And so just like anything else in this business, guys, you could get paid a couple ways. Number 1, obviously, if you turn into a rental, you could get the rental listing and get paid that way. But also, too, what you want to do is you want to negotiate in your commission on the option side as well. And then also talk to your seller about negotiating part of that commission up front.
Meaning if that attorney pays a $20,000 non-refundable deposit, you could take half of that,
yes,
3/4 of that as commission, right?
Right.
And get paid your commission.
Right. So that's how you guys would get paid in a scenario like that.
You could also get paid, by the way, with sub-twos, right? You can negotiate your commission as an agent, putting together a sub-two transaction. So know that everything is negotiable. Everything's negotiable. I think, Charlie, you bring up a really good point of people understanding the loans and the debt balances on the assets that are out there. That is incredibly important,
Yeah.
right? You want to talk about how long it takes to get an assumption done for people?
All right, that's a good question. All right, so let's take FHA assumptions, right? So basically, now we're not talking about FHA sub-twos. We're talking about the process of how you assume a loan. So there's two things going on, right? Each FHA loan has an underlying investor, and they also have a servicer associated with that thing. So on an FHA assumption, it's a two-pronged approach. You've got to get approved by the loan servicer, right? And you also got to get approved by the government under an FHA criteria, because once you're approved for the assumption, then the underlying borrower's liability goes away, you become the primary borrower, and it's done. Now, something like that takes about 45 days. And if you were applying for a normal FHA loan, doing an FHA loan assumption is about the same length in time, roughly 30 to 45 days. Now, on the VA side, USDA is going to follow the exact same thing as an FHA if any of you guys are rural agents. On the VA side, it's a little bit different. And the question that I always get asked on the VA side was, well, do I need to be a veteran to assume a VA loan? The answer is no. But you are going to have to get approved on both sides, not only with the VA, right, but you're also going to have to get approved with the loan servicer. So you've got a twofold approval approach. Now, if you're a non-VA, a non-veteran, and you are getting approved for a VA assumption, what happens to the veteran's entitlement is that entitlement doesn't go away. So if you have a non-VA assuming a VA loan, that veteran's entitlement is going to follow him to the next VA purchase. So, for example, if it's a $400,000 loan that's being assumed by a non-VA on a VA loan, then that's just $400,000 that veteran can't use as an entitlement onto the next loan. But he can get another VA loan, just not for a bigger amount. Now, if the VA loan is assumed by a veteran, then that entitlement files the new VA, the entitlement gets replaced, and then the veteran that's selling the house has their entire entitlement. So you guys have got to understand that as well.
Yeah, the underlying loans that are out there are actually gold. They're gold, right?
Yes.
But many times the agent, the listing agent, nor the buyer agent fully understand the power of that underlying loan. So now you guys know. I would highly encourage you to get out there and do a lot of research to figure out how you can help sellers really sell for maximum dollar when they've got these underlying loans, and also how to structure a great deal for a buyer, right? It's helping really strengthen the market, right?
Yeah, I totally agree, because look, at the end of the game, what are you guys doing as agents? It's a marketing business,
Yeah.
right? You're marketing. You're marketing to get listings. You're marketing to get buy clients, but more importantly, you're marketing your listing. And so the more tools that you have in the toolbox, the better you are as an agent. And of course, the more leads you're going to get and the more clients you're going to get. But also with that said, I want to pivot just a little bit. And we need to talk about not only the current interest rate environment, but the past interest rate environment. And that's kind of like what Rob said, hey, let's go back in time. And I'm on board. Let's go back in time, right? When were the interest rates at the record lows? Do we know this? The interest rates were at the record lows between 2020 and 2022. Mm-hmm. So what you want to focus on are those loans that were originated between that time frame, because you want to sell to your buyers the opportunity to get into those record low interest rates. Now, interest rates have gone up. What, 30-year fixed got as high as what, 7.5%, 8%? Right now it's at what, 6.5%, 6.6 3/4. So if you can figure out the timeline it takes of those lower interest rates loans, and oh, by the way, not all of those loans have been paid back. There's like 60 or 70% of these much lower interest rates loans that are sitting out there. And if you're a smart home seller, I'm not so sure that I would sell a property with that lower interest rate loan, because that's cash, man, that's gold. And so same thing when you're trying to sell these listings. Market it that way. Understand the financing, understand the creative financing techniques, and just market it.
Who survived 2008 here in the real estate? Okay, woo! Yeah, the veterans out there, right? Round of applause for everybody. So, if you guys remember, the market shifted slowly and then suddenly, right? It was like slow. So 2005, it slowed down, and then 2006, slower than 2000. You could see the Titanic headed right towards the iceberg, and then boom, it dropped. Now that drop will not happen because the underlying loans today are so strong, right? Like you need a blood sample to get a loan. Back then you didn't.
Right.
And yet we will start seeing more pre-foreclosures than we have in recent history. Government shutdown will contribute to that. Shifting of AI is going to attribute to that. And so talking about marketing, one of the things we're doing within our business is making sure that we're speaking to that consumer that they realize they've got a ton of equity in their property and maybe they're experiencing some kind of financial hardship right now, and yet they can sell and take a lot of chips off the table. Realistically, we don't want them to sell if they don't have to, but reality tells us life happens. Murphy comes around, right? There's a divorce, there's a death, there's depression, there's things that just happen, right?
The D's, yep, the D's.
The D's.
Yep.
And so as agents, we have the ability to solve difficult problems for sellers, but only if you know how to do that. And having realistic upfront discussions with sellers about what has to happen in order to get their property sold today.
Well, no, you know, that's funny because that's a perfect segue on exactly what's going on. Is that what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot more pre-foreclosure filings. So you might call them pre-foreclosures, you might call them NODs, notice of defaults. And so also too at the courthouse step auctions, we're seeing a couple things. We're seeing banks taking back properties more so where investors would have been filling that void and buying them at the courthouse steps. So you're starting to see more bank-owned properties. The other thing that we're starting to see a lot more of is these things called, you guys remember the short sales?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the short sale?
I was a short sale king for a while.
Craziness. And so what we're starting to see is that a lot of people that are getting foreclosed on, they had loan originations between 2023, 2024, and even some 2025s. And so those deals need to be short sale before it goes to a foreclosure for your clients. So you guys are going to have to learn the short sale business. I hate to say it, it's coming. And the other thing that you have to realize is that a lot of these borrowers are going to need a little bit of help, especially on the creative financing side, because if they have an FHA VA loan, it might be full bore to what the property is worth. But if they have a much lower interest rate, even though your buyer might overpay a little bit for the property, let's say another $10,000, $15,000 that you can't sell it for, it might be worth their time to overpay for the property to do a VA FHA assumption because you're further into the AM schedule. So you just have got to understand all these different tools that you need to put in your toolbox as a real estate agent, not only as it pertains to the creative financing side, but you also got to understand what's going on in the marketplace and more importantly, the investor marketplace.
Sure.
Totally interrupting, but like you guys keep hitting on the assumption piece of it, but one of the biggest challenges is those 2020, 2021 loans, you know, there's such a large gap in equity that, you know, what's the best way to make that up? I know Tower Federal Credit Union was one that was doing them, I don't think they're doing them anymore. Is there a hard money option? Is there, like, if you're working with somebody who doesn't have another property where they can get personal funds, right? They can't pull a personal loan, they don't have the equity from another property, what are the options?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question.
Mom and dad,
Yeah,
friend,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, the
Private
bank.
lenders that are out there.
We call it the bank of Chuck.
Yeah, bank jock.
So, yeah, no, all day. And so, but what you have to understand, for those of you guys who don't know what hard money lending is, it's basically a loan on the hard asset where you qualify the asset and you don't really qualify the borrower. Where a hard money lender will come in is you put a hard money lender in a second trust position. However, there's a however. There has to be a good equity position between the first trust and the value of the property for a hard money lender to entertain it. And so in certain markets, like let's say Northern Virginia, a hard money lender will go 75% of the actual value of the house. So you go 75% times the value, subtract out the first mortgage, just like a normal HELOC would do, and then you can request a hard money lender, whatever the difference is. Now, what a hard money lender is going to ask you, they're going to ask you the same thing over and over again. How do I get paid back? Is it going to be a sale event? Is it going to be a refi event? We have to know how we're going to get paid back. Now, if the equity is tight, hard money is not your option. The hard money guys are only your option where there's a good equity position. You can use the money to pay back some debt, or you can use the money to renovate the property. Back in the day when we first started, and you're going to like this story actually, is we were involved in something called Lend and List. So when I first got started in the real estate business as a local agent, we had some money and we were always into the pre-foreclosure market. But what we would do with these guys, because we would target those pre-foreclosures that had a lot of equity. But a lot of times these guys didn't want to sell it to you as is, where is, because they weren't going to make enough money. So one of the things that we did for them is we said, okay, Mr. Home Seller, you're in foreclosure, you get foreclosed in 2 weeks. What we will do is we'll put a second trust on top of your house. That second trust is going to pay back arrearages. It's going to allow you to put a contractor in there to renovate your house. You are then going to give us the listing. Lend and list. Now, what I have to tell you though is that our second trust position on that lend and list went out at, drum roll, 15% and 5 points. Now, it was 15% and 5 points on only $50,000 or $60,000 because there was an equity cushion. Then what we did is once the property was renovated, as Green Dot Realty agents, we would then charge them a 7% listing because that was a premium service. So that's how we cut our teeth back in 2002, 3, 4, 5 before the subprime crisis. And that's how we got into the lending space, whereas back then we really didn't call it hard money loans. It was just our lend and list program. And that carried us for a long time because these pre-foreclosure guys didn't want to sell their house as is. So we were a partnership. They were willing to let us come in there and renovate it so that they could get the max sale price for their house. And that's how we did it.
So we do that, and we call that our renovate now, pay later, or pay at settlement program.
Yep.
But we've often touted it as a no interest loan. We just charge more commission on the back end. I know Curbio.
Not us.
What's that? Yeah, not you
Not
guys.
us.
Not you guys. But what are the things that people have to worry about or look out for in that situation, Charlie?
Well, I've got another story.
Okay.
Shocker. So I was in First Trust, and I'll tell you exactly where it was. I won't give you the street name because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. Annandale, Virginia.
By the way, this is a great tactic for agents right now. Like it's a way for you to actually earn more money, but you have to protect yourself properly. So hopefully this story helps you understand how to protect yourself.
Annandale, Virginia. It was a fix and flipper who bought a house at a pretty good price. I believe they bought off the MLS in Annandale. Now in Annandale, Virginia, I guess there's 1 or 2 different school options. And one of the school options wasn't the best, and that investor really didn't know about it. And so I was a first trust position. The house was probably worth about $600,000. They bought it for $350,000. It needed $100,000 in renovation, right? And so I didn't lend the entire amount on that. It was worth $600,000. I probably lent about $420,000 into the $350,000 with a $100,000 renovation. But what they did is they hired Curbio to come in and do the renovation. Well, what Curbio did is when they come in there and do the renovations, they put a second trust on top of us, right, in the form of either a second trust or a mechanics lien so that they make sure that they get paid back. Well, what happened is our borrower stopped paying us. So they stopped paying us because the house ended up being upside down because between holding costs, renovation costs, that obviously if you guys have a $100,000 renovation, I can guarantee you one thing, it's not going to be $100,000. It's going to be $120,000 to $130,000. They went way above and beyond on the renovation side. They mistargeted the market because evidently the house wasn't in a very good school district. They were going to lose money. They stopped paying us. We had to foreclose at the Fairfax County Courthouse. Now, when there was a mechanics lien put on there by a Curbio, I had to wait 6 months and a day to foreclose because of title issues, because as a first trust foreclosure, I need to make sure I blow away all the junior lien holders in case somebody doesn't come and bid on the property. So luckily for us, we did it 6 months and a day. We did the foreclosure. A courthouse buyer came and bid on it. They didn't bid much over our full debt price, and it actually blew away Curbio. So you've got to be very careful when you're using this kind of thing, okay?
Yeah, so they lost $100,000.
Yeah, they lost a lot of money. Curbio lost money, the borrower lost money. Us being in good first position, we certainly didn't lose money, but they did.
Mechanics lien versus a second deed of trust. You'd go with a second deed of trust all day long, right?
All day.
Yeah.
But for us though, on our hard money loan docs though, certain markets we don't allow second trust, right? Because we don't like, if you're coming to us with a borrower and you're borrowing hard money, we get it. You need money, that's why you're coming to us, that's why you're paying the interest rates, you don't have that much money. We frown upon gap funding. Gap funding is the difference between, let's say, a hard money loan and to get the loan closed. We don't like gap funding. Now, we don't like second trust being put on top of us because it makes our life a little bit harder in order for us to foreclose. Because the one thing I cannot do is I cannot do a deed in lieu of foreclosure. See, what you have to understand as a hard money lender, I have relationships with borrowers. It's not like I'm randomly sending out money to a borrower that I don't know. They're investors. They're using our money to make money. So we have a relationship. I do not want to ruin the relationship on a foreclosure event, but by putting a second trust on top of us, I can no longer do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and I cannot make it unfortunately friendly like we like to do.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you want repeat customers.
That's it.
Well, who has questions around creative financing, getting more listings in a shifting market, selling more listings in a shifting market, before we wrap it up? Yes?
So how the second trust can be on the first lien? I don't get it.
Well, that's what makes it a second trust, right? You'd have the first position, and then you get a second trust.
No, but second trust got the opportunity at the courthouse foreclose. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I'm going to talk about a couple different things first, okay? Number one, all second trust means is that you're in second position to a senior lien holder, right? But a second trust can come in all form and fashion, right? What everyone else is thinking about is, okay, I got a house, owner occupied, I go to the Wells Fargo, I go to Bank of America, I have enough equity, I get a home equity line of credit, right? That's what we think of as second trust. What you got to realize, though, is that second trust can be a hard money second trust. A second trust can be something else, right? And so what you've got to realize is that you're just in second position, and you've got to understand, as a second trust owner, as the bank or as a private lender, you've got to understand everything about your senior lien holders, all the way down to the default rate. So if I'm ever to do a second trust on a property that already has an existing instrument in place, I have to understand the AM schedule, I have to understand the interest rate, and more importantly, I have to understand the default provisions. Because the default provisions of that first trust is what eats up the second trust equity. So you've got to be very, very educated on that first trust security instrument, okay? Did I answer the question, or you got?
Absolutely, I'm impressed actually. I was always confused about it.
Thank you, I got a little lucky.
Go ahead.
As like an individual, as a borrower, how would you navigate? You just told us basically what not to do, what's like the situation to avoid, as in like working with an investor who puts a loan on top of another loan and he's behind on both. Well, how would you recommend we navigate our clients to navigate that situation correctly when they're in positions where they don't have a loan?
If they want to buy,
Yeah, or they want to sell.
right, or they want to sell,
Yeah, if they want to like buy and invest, or like buy a property, invest in it, or they want to fix it, flip it, just buy a property and invest.
one of the things I always say that agents have a competitive advantage over maybe new investors coming in or investors in general, is that hopefully you guys have learned how to run comps at a high level. Like, that is a skill, really understanding what the after repair value or the ARV is of an asset. So if you're like not 100% confident in that, I'd spend the next week really learning how to underwrite what a property looks like fixed up in today's market. And by the way, today's market looks different than what it did 6 months ago, right? So your competitive weapon in all of this is knowing what something is worth fixed up. The area that agents typically don't understand is what things cost to
Right.
fix it up.
Yes.
And so that's also an education. The way you learn that is by becoming friends with a contractor and having that contractor walk you through a property and say, hey, what's the average price per square foot to fully renovate this house and make it look like everything else in this neighborhood? Because there's different grades of renovation, right? There's a rental grade renovation and there's a fix and flip renovation, and they're different, right? The materials you put in, like all of that is different. So if you know what the after repair value is and you know what things cost, then you can protect the seller, like your buyer, I'm saying, when they're entering into a project, right? And there's the old rule of thumb, like 70 cents on the dollar, 75 cents on the dollar minus renovation is the acquisition strike price for a fix and flip. But you need a spreadsheet. Charlie, I'm sure you have a spreadsheet to give people. Do you guys have a spreadsheet on your website?
Oh my gosh, we're spreadsheet jockeys.
Yeah, I know.
We
you-
have a spreadsheet for everything, including down to the renovation.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
spreadsheet. So,
yeah.
if anybody wants to just send me a DM on Instagram, I'm happy to send you our fix and flip spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's happy to send you his. We've, after doing hundreds of fix and flips in this market. I know what the price per square foot is for the different types of renovations, primarily Northern Virginia, because we don't touch DC or Maryland. So ours is very specific to Nova, but I'm sure Charlie's got them for all markets.
No, it's very interesting because you guys got us up here to talk creative financing, but I think if I left this conversation without doing you guys a service, I better do it. He brought up something very, very important. He said, you'd better learn how to run comps. I'm an agent. I got a listing. Market changed. Market change. What's the hardest thing you can do with a home seller? Convince them to lower the price. That's the hardest thing, right? Kelly, we talk about this all the time. What you really, really have to understand is not only do you gotta know how to pull comps, but you gotta learn how to pull comps and understand the marketplace at the subdivision level. If you don't understand the market at the subdivision level, you're wasting your time. What I mean by that is there's 3 different types of markets. There's a bull, market's going up. There's a bear, market going down. And there's a neutral market within the subdevelopment level. I don't want to go here and listen to these economists who talk about macro real estate. I don't care about macro. I only care what's happening at the subdevelopment level. Now, for example, if your subdevelopment has actives, last 120 days, because I only go back 4 months when I look at sold comps. I might only go back 90 days because I got to understand what the hell's going on in 90 days. If it has actives and it has solds, it has no under contracts or pendings, what does that tell you? Properties are going down. They're going down. You got to know how to price it. But then you're going to come back and say, oh, my client isn't going to use me because I'm not giving the highest price that they can get for their listing. Do we want to be listing agents or do we want to be selling agents? Okay. The next market type you got to understand. I have another subdevelopment. I have a bunch of actives, maybe 4 actives. I got 2 or 3 under contracts. I've got 4 or 5 solds. Okay. That tells me it's a neutral market, and it tells me there's buyers in that subdevelopment. Okay, maybe I can price it neutral. Then I have the marketplace like we're all used to in Northern Virginia. No actives, bunch of under contracts and pendings, and a bunch of solds. There's no inventory. Well, then you could afford to aggressively price it as a listing agent. If you don't know the marketplace at the subdevelopment level of where you're going to do the listing, and if you don't price it right, guys, it ain't selling. End of story.
I'll give you a quick script on that. I always tell sellers, seller, our job is to create the FOMO effect.
Yep.
Right? Fear of missing out effect. The, oh honey, if we don't go make an offer on this today, somebody else is gonna get it, right? So real estate logically makes a lot of sense. Like when I'm talking to a seller, I'm like, logically, you're probably thinking, hey, let's list higher because people are always gonna negotiate us down, right? And they all say, yeah, that's right. I said, well, you know, unfortunately, the market isn't logical, it's emotional. And so what we need to do is play into human psychology. Yeah. Humans fear like missing out more than the pleasure of gain. Like they miss fear of loss more than the pleasure of gain. So if we price at or slightly below, we put all the leverage in our hands as the seller, and you end up making more money. And I assume, because we're talking, you want to make more money, right? And they're like, I want to make more money.
I totally agree, and I don't want to call you out, Miss Kelly. Kelly, raise your hand. And so one of the strategies, can I tell the story? Okay. One of the strategies that Kelly is using, and I'm sure Rob does it with his agents, is that they'll tell a seller to do what's called an auction style strategy, right? Put that property on the market for a price you know it's going to sell and get multiple bids, and then let the market bid it up. And because eventually, though, the market is going to dictate what that property is worth. Okay? Now, let's say back in the day, let's say 6 months ago in Northern Virginia, you might get 12 offers on a house, 10 offers on a house, and it escalated up to $200,000 or $300,000 higher or $50,000 higher. Well, what's the issue you're going to run into? Well, I'm going to run into an appraisal issue. Well, one of the things that we instruct agents or our students to do is if you have that scenario where you have multiple offers, kind of like yours, go ahead and show the appraiser, create your appraiser package for the appraiser. Go ahead and include the top 2 or 3 offers in that appraisal package so the appraiser can see what happened in the market. Because that's what an appraiser is doing. An appraiser is saying, well, what's this house worth market now? right? We're not talking a month or two ago. That's what it's worth. And so that's one of the strategies that we use. So you guys, that's a good strategy.
Yeah, that's how you end up helping sellers net more. Go ahead.
So as real estate agents, we usually get opportunities to invest ourselves, right?
Yes.
Or the consumer does. What do you advise for a self-employed on a creative loan to be able to be an investor of sorts?
So, wow, now you're speaking my love language.
Yes.
Because I really believe that every agent should actively, constantly be buying as much real estate as possible. You will wake up a decade later and kick yourself if you didn't. And maybe you're kicking yourself now, but it's not too late. Right? So your question was, how do you position yourself in order to do that? Let me give you a very basic, easy strategy. Okay? All of you should have a database, correct? Raise your hand if you have a CRM. Actually, I know the majority of you don't have a CRM. If you did, you'd make more money. But those that have a CRM, have a database, right? Like, raise your hand. Okay, in that database, there are people that have money who want to invest alongside you, but you don't know they do because you've never asked them. See, you can bring the deal and they can bring the capital. And in 2008, when Lehman Brothers was filing for, bankruptcy, nobody was giving a recently self-employed real estate agent any money. I had a guy in my database that had a lot of money. And I happened to mention these properties peaked at $350, they're now $150, they run for $1,500 a month. And he said, well, if you find those, I will fund them. And so we just started dollar cost averaging properties with none of my own capital. And so that is an easy way for you to get into buying investments without any of your own cash, is through partnerships. Or you talk to somebody like Charlie, because you find a really, really good deal. He will lend you the money and you could do a DSCR loan, right? Debt service coverage ratio loan, if you plan on holding the property. Fixing and flipping, guys, just so you know, is not real investing in my opinion. You're learning the game. That is just more active income. You already have an active income job, which is your agent business. As soon as you start distracting yourself with doing fix and flips, you take yourself out of lead generation of controlling assets and listings at the ground level. You actually end up, if that deal goes bad, you end up losing, right?
Yeah.
So focus matters. You could maybe do a couple a year as an agent, fix and flips, to then take that money and buy long-term assets. But the real goal is owning real estate long-term, right? That's the real goal. Go ahead, your question.
Thank you so much for bringing the subject. I think that is just so on point with what's happening in the market right now. That's our way out. That's how I feel it. But somehow I have been told to be to stay away from those and
Sure.
invest my ship sitting here right now. I would want to know what are the funds to subject to, what are the things we need to look out for, and is there an appraisal required on subject?
Well, I mean, let's think about it, guys. This is why we make so much money. Because you guys aren't being educated the right way, right? Think about it. And by the way, I own a brokerage. My partner's licensed as a broker, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and I own one. The big players, for whatever reason, and this is why Rob's in business, teaching agents how to be investors. That's why I'm in business. I have students. Because, and this is going to get back to your question here in a second, is these bigger brokers only want to do one thing. They want to churn you guys. They want you to make as much commissionable income as possible so that they can make money. When we're teaching investors, you guys need to be, I always say, you need to be real estate agents, but you need to be investors first, agents second, nothing personal. Because if you're truly trying to build wealth, you got to be investors. And so sub 2 has a bad name associated with it. I get it. But the folks that are giving it a bad name are brokers who don't want to have anything to do with creative financing. And getting back to your question, number one, the one thing you got to do if you're going to talk about being an investor and creative financing deals and listing your own fix and flips, you better have a discussion with your broker. Because a lot of the bigger brokers don't want to be part of that world. They don't want you being the fix and flip buyer and listing your own listing. They frown upon that. Now, one of the things that we did back in the subprime crash was under Green Dot Realty, me and a partner, we sold over 500 houses, and you bought one of them, sight
Still own
unseen. And the way we were able to infiltrate the REO space was because I was from a small broker. Weichert's wouldn't touch it. Remax wouldn't touch it. Long and Foster wouldn't touch it. Keller Williams really wasn't out at that point. EXP wasn't out. The bigger brokers wouldn't touch the REO business. Oh, it's real estate owned. Oh, these houses are dilapidated. They're bank owned. I don't want to get in the bank owned space because I might have a lot of liability because these properties have problems, right? So as agents, you guys have got to figure out what you want to do, just like Rob was saying. And there's nothing wrong with making a lot of commissionable income, but once you make the commissionable income, you better learn how to invest it.
I call it building a cash machine.
Yes.
Your agent business is a cash machine. If you do it right,
Yes.
it's a cash machine. And then you take the cash and you start building your wealth machine.
Yes.
And your wealth machine is what I call highly leveraged income that over time works harder than you do. See, right now, you're working so hard.
Right.
Every month you start at zero.
Right.
Close another deal, close another deal, close another deal. But at some point, you've got to get off that transaction treadmill. And the only way to do it is by learning new skills and a new way of thinking and adopting a new identity, right? That of a wealth maker, that of a deal maker, that of an investor, right? And you just transition that cash that you're making from your cash machine and you start building a wealth machine. Now, a wealth machine means, it just doesn't mean real estate. It can mean the S&P, cash, crypto, you know, anything, actually, let's not say crypto. Let's say anything that gives you dividend yield, right? I'm a fan of crypto, but it doesn't give you a dividend yield, right?
Right.
Like it's more like it's more of a store of value, right? Like gold.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gets you thinking a little bit about, I need to build my cash machine, my agent business, for the sole purpose, and the only purpose, to build a wealth machine, right? Because nobody's coming to save you. Nobody is coming to save you.
That's exactly right. And so when he's talking about CRMs, I think you should, if you want to be a dual, when I say dual, I mean you want to be an agent and you're good and you want to be an investor. I would categorize my CRM under two different databases. Number one, your normal clients, people you touch, your sphere of influence, and you're getting listings and clients, right? Number two, you need to keep the investment properties that you have located for whatever reasons, and you need to keep a separate database on that for your investor purposes only. Now, I want to tell you one quick story. I guess we're in here soon. We could do this all day, couldn't we?
Yeah.
The last house that I purchased from the courthouse steps, I'm dating myself a couple years, was owned by a RE/MAX agent that was in the RE/MAX Hall of Fame. Her primary residence got foreclosed on. I knew this person for a long time. So I had to make sure that when I bought that house at that courthouse steps, in other words, when that house went up for a foreclosure auction, it was in an area called Lake Ridge. Y'all know where Lake Ridge is? Specifically, do y'all know where Linwood is? Linwood at the time was a top area in Lake Ridge. This lady had owned this house for 25, 30 years, RE/MAX Hall of Fame. I will not disclose her name. I overbought this house at the courthouse steps. The reason why I overbought it is because my competition that would have bought it would have kicked her out of her house. I bought it because I wanted her to have a nice transition into another property, whatever that was. The house was an absolute hoarder house. I overpaid for it. Why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story because I am so appalled that this person who's in the RE/MAX Hall of Fame had no wealth. The only asset that they owned was their owner-occupied house that, oh, by the way, was over-leveraged. And so for you guys, you got to wake up. Like Rob's saying, you got to figure out how to do your commissional business, build your capital stack, and you've got to be investors. You have to be.
So that's my plug to come to Grid, right? Gridinvestor.com.
Come to Grid?
Right? Yeah, come to Grid, learn, get around people that are having this conversation. It starts with just putting yourself in a room and just being like, okay, what does all this stuff mean? It's going to sound like Chinese. That's okay. Over time, it will start making sense and you'll start dipping your toe into it. But you guys have an advantage being in the game already. All right.
Come to Grid. I'm speaking on Thursday in Woodbridge.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, I think that.
Oh yeah, I guess I got to pitch. Do I pitch that? I
Yeah,
don't
of
know. Am I a
course.
sales
Do
guy?
it, do it.
I got my own meetup second Wednesday of the month. It's a Clear Sky Education Deals meetup. We do nothing but present real estate deals. Fix and flips, buy and hold, syndications, development deals. You name it, we have it.
Yeah, the point being, I started in a room like that 25 years ago,
Yeah,
right? John Peterson,
yeah, among my
Right.
buddies.
yep,
He's one of my buddies.
Ernie Kessler,
Yep.
right? These guys were doing this and still do this, and it's such a great way to build it. But by the way, if you're an agent and you want to put yourself in a room with multi-transactional clients, you go to these investment meetings. All of them are buying real estate all the time. Imagine meeting Charlie along the way, right? It would have
Yeah.
changed. It would have changed your life, all right? So,
Yeah, any other questions?
okay, thank you.
Well, I hope you
everybody.
enjoyed it. All right.